Welcome to the Commonwealth Policy Center's Candidate Forum. I'm your host, Richard Nelson. This is where we let you know about the candidates, why they're running for office, and where they stand on the issues. Joining us for this forum is the incumbent for State House District 2, Richard Heath. Representative Heath has served in the Kentucky House since 2013, and he also serves as the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, and he's running for re-election. Richard, welcome to our forum.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this forum. As I mentioned, this is an opportunity to let the voters know who you are and why you're running for office. And you just wrapped up a very busy session. You literally yesterday, as we're recording this, you wrapped up day 2 of the veto override session. I think that's where we'll start is tell us a little bit about this last session, maybe some of the highlights, bills that you sponsored. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. One of the bills that I sponsored that some of the folks may remember as House Bill 9 from last year. So if a city or county government or nonprofit utility or a nonprofit, 501c3 wanted to do a community project that would benefit the community, and they would apply for a federal grant, but they don't have the match. And so there's a program came out from Washington, D.C. in 2021 that would allow states who have suffered from losses of jobs from coal and to, I guess, be at the top of the list of some of those federal dollars. And that's great. But if you don't have the state match, if you don't have the match on the local end, it doesn't help. So House Bill 9 provided money for a state match if you could find a federal grant. It started out to be 41 counties. There were 21 counties in East Kentucky, 20 counties in West Kentucky that were directly impacted by the downturn in coal. And then a year later, we pass House Bill 9, we get the ball rolling and get things in place, and then it's opened up to 106 counties. So we had to come back with House Bill 723 this year to tweak some language and make some changes to bring in those other counties. And since we were so close, we went ahead and made it available for all 120 counties as far as the state match on our end. So that bill just got across the line right before the veto period began, and I was really happy about that. And we've already seen some projects that have been awarded from House Bill 9.
This is particularly important to you because being from Graves County, Mayfield was hit by tornadoes a little over 3 years ago, and you're in rebuilding mode. And for any of the people tuned in who have not seen Mayfield, most have seen pictures, but unless you've been there, it's been devastated, and it's like a bombed out area. And I'm very grieved. I've been to Mayfield for well over 20 years back and forth, and to see the downtown devastated by the tornado and flattened was very sad. And of course, you're representing that area in this bill, House Bill 9. Really means a lot to your area, doesn't it?
It does. It gives us a chance to rebuild some things that were not covered in the West Kentucky Safe Fund. That was a different bill. That was House Bill 5 in 2022. The tornado happened in December of 21. So when we went into session in 22, there was a House Bill 5 that I carried that had $200 million to go to the West Kentucky tornado counties. Again, county and city government and nonprofit utilities to help them rebuild and get back on their feet. So they didn't have to wait for insurance. They didn't have to wait for FEMA. They could immediately tap into this $200 million and start the rebuilding process. And then if they got insurance money or FEMA money on the backside, then they could reimburse the state. So that has been a huge benefit to all of West Kentucky that experienced the tornado. Mayfield got hit especially hard. I know just in the service area where Mayfield Electric Water covers, they lost 400 residents and 150 businesses. And of course, we lost our courthouse, our city hall, fire station, police station. Mayfield Electric Water took a direct hit, and they lost a lot of their critical infrastructure. They lost a water tower. Their substation had a lot of damage. And so 2024 was our first budget year to really help get Mayfield and Graves County back on their feet. And so out of the $200 million SAFE fund, there was about $65 million left that had not been requested.
Okay.
And we asked county and city government and the utilities to get us their numbers. How much do you need? But they had time to get with contractors and get estimates. And it just so happens it was $65 million. I don't think it was planned that way, but and that included the city hall, fire station, police station, Mayfield Electric and Water, the Graves County Physical Courthouse, and American Legion building. The $65 million with what they had in insurance and FEMA money, they could all get rebuilt, and that was going to be huge. So I had them to send in their numbers, and we condensed it to a one-page document because I knew it would go to free conference and be decided in there, and they needed a one-pager. And I received word that they couldn't let Mayfield and Graves County have all that money because there were a couple other counties who had some needs. And I understood that. I can appreciate that. I thought, okay, it's been 2 years. Everybody who had a request has made it known by now. So my question was, I understand how much do the other counties need, and I was willing to see if I could make it work with what was left over. And the answer came back, well, we don't know yet. They haven't gotten us their numbers, and we're down to within just a few days of being at the end of the session before the veto period where we have to get our budget passed. So out of the $65 million request, Mayfield and Graves County was going to receive $31 million. There's going to be enough for City Hall, Fire Station, Police Station, and the courthouse for the Graves County Fiscal Court. Mayfield Electric and Water needed $22 million, and they got zero. And I thought, how can that be? They can't rebuild that without some help. So I worked with Senator Howe, and we got the $22 million put in there and got it passed. And so the request was $65 million. We ended up with $54 million. We got the money we need to rebuild the critical infrastructure, and we couldn't be happier.
And this is part of the job of a state representative or a state senator, for that matter, where you are advocating for your community. You're making sure that when there's a tragedy or a devastation like the tornado that you had a few years ago, that you're there to bring back the resources necessary to rebuild. Very quickly, what is the status of the rebuilding efforts of Mayfield?
So now that we have the funding, there'll be groundbreakings, and there's actually dirt work being done now. These projects were shovel ready. They're just waiting on the funding, and they've been sitting back with their fingers crossed, praying that the funding would come. Good. So it's done. We're going to start the rebuilding. I think you'll see in 2 years from now, Mayfield will look totally different.
Richard, I want to take a step back. I've known you since before you were elected in office, but your background is agriculture.
Yes.
You're a farmer. You've got a pole barn company.
Right.
What prompted you to want to run for office to begin with? Farmers are pretty mild-mannered. They're hardworking, salt-of-the-earth people, and yet you threw your hat in the ring and you decided to run. What prompted you originally?
And I've been asked that question a lot. And it started in 2010 when Senator Rand Paul ran for the U.S. Senate for the first time. And I liked what he had to say. I got involved in his campaign on the local level, attending some fundraisers and going to the phone bank and making some phone calls, which I had never done. And after he got elected, I told my wife, I said, I need to get involved. Don't know where, don't know when or how. I was thinking county level. In 2012, our state representative put a notice in the paper right before Christmas and said he wasn't going to run for re-election. And I couldn't sleep the next 3 nights.
Fred Netzler?
Fred Netzler,
okay.
yes.
Long-serving state House member.
Yes. So, and I couldn't sleep the next 3 nights for thinking about that. I let Christmas go by, and I shared with my wife and my family, my pastor, and it was, I felt a calling to do that. So
now, were you the first Republican elected to Graves County, maybe in history? Or
yes, I'm the first Republican to hold that seat in the history of Graves County. Graves County has always been known as a Democratic stronghold. I grew up in a Democratic household. My dad voted straight D, and Ruth and I switched our registration in early 2000s over pro-life issues. We didn't agree with the position the Democratic Party held on pro-life, and never dreamed I would be running for office. That was not on my bucket list.
Right. But you felt called to run. Let's talk about your work on the House Agriculture Committee. That's an issue that's near and dear to your heart. Of course, West Kentucky is an important ag production area.
Yes.
Graves County is a significant ag area.
Yes.
You sponsored a bill, House Bill
575.
575, that would ban or prevent countries that are hostile to us, countries like China, maybe some Middle Eastern countries, from purchasing land here in the United States, particularly farmland.
Yes.
You sponsored this the last couple of sessions. Give us an update on what happened this session.
Sure. 2023 was House Bill 500 and got it filed late. It was a short session. We got it through the House with bipartisan support. Didn't make it through the Senate. So we worked on it over the interim. There were some questions raised, some concerns about unintended consequences. And actually did quite a bit of work on it over the interim, even after session started, right up until we were running out of time. Mm-hmm. And the bill took on several different forms. We brought people to the table that would be affected by the bill that had interest in it. Farm Bureau was at the table. Kentucky Thoroughbred Association was at the table. Some of my other colleagues, the commodity groups, corn growers, soybean growers, pork producers, you name it. I talked to a lot of people, and we kept tweaking the language and redrafting, trying to get it where we could accomplish our goal of not allowing countries that are on a federal list that the United States will not sell weapons to. Mm-hmm. Some of you just mentioned China, Cuba, Russia, Venezuela, and a lot of others, but there's 24 total. And so we finally got the bill through the House and down to the Senate, and another group came and said, what if a country wants to buy, and I'll just use Graves County, for example, we have a 2,000-acre mega site. Mm-hmm. What if China wants to come in there and build a factory? So I said, we can work on that. South Dakota just passed a similar bill, and they had some language in there that made an exception just for that. Mm-hmm. So the exception was if one of these countries wants to purchase farmland for non-agriculture use, like building a factory, mm-hmm. then they've got 5 years to develop that. If they don't do it in 5 years, then they got to sell the property. Mm-hmm. And so we did a Senate committee sub to make that language happen, mm-hmm. and which meant when the bill came back from the Senate, by the way, it passed with overwhelming support in the House. Senate passed unanimously. It was on the consent calendar. But because of the committee sub, it had to come back to the House for concurrence. Mm-hmm. And that's all we like, just mm-hmm. concur on the bill. Mm-hmm. We didn't get it done before the veto period, and I was told by House leadership that we would get it done when we come back the final 2 days. And something changed. Mm-hmm. I don't know what. Mm-hmm. I'll find out. I have to trust my House leadership that they have information I don't have, and I'll find out what we need to do and go back and try again next year.
This is a national security issue, though, isn't it? Yes. When we have countries that are hostile to us, they can, by law, or they're allowed to come in and buy farmland. Sure. And if they were to buy up a significant amount of farmland, that's not good for our security if we were ever to go to war, God forbid.
Exactly.
Or if they wanted to threaten us in other ways, if they had significant amounts of acreage here where they're growing crops,
yes.
that could harm our national defense as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, and when I lose a bill like that, it causes me to lose sleep. So it occurred to me last night that the men and women who fought for this country to keep us free, the countries that want to do us harm can bypass all of that mm-hmm. and come straight in and write a check and buy our land. And the people who pay the ultimate price to keep us free, they can go around them and just write a check and buy the land. Yeah. And we've got to stop that. So I'll keep trying.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I appreciate your leadership on that. Richard, I'd like to talk a little bit, go back to some of the formative influences in your life. People who've shaped you, whether pastors, maybe political leaders, historical figures. What have been some of the significant influences that have shaped who you are as a person, and then how you think about politics as well?
Yeah, of course, raised in a family with 9 kids. I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters. Mm-hmm. And I tell people jokingly we had a drug problem. We were drugged to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, and so grew up in a Christian family, and grew up on the farm. You know, we had a garden, we had livestock, and we had crops, and I loved it, and learned a work ethic at an early age. Followed in Dad's footsteps and was out there on the farm, and so that was where I wanted to go in my future. In high school, really never given much thought to college or doing anything else, but just farming. And in fact, I didn't make really good grades in high school. Dad set the bar kind of low. He said, just don't fail. You know, I'm number 8 out of 9 kids. He's already been down this road. He doesn't want anybody repeating school year. So just don't fail. And I exceeded that bar. I passed all my classes. I could have done much better than I did. But, I worked at Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company after graduation for a year and a half, 6 nights a week, building radial car tires. And I got a FHA loan and purchased the farm and equipment from Dad and was on my own at age 18, 19-year-old, farming and working factory work. And I made the decision that I wanted to come home and farm. I'd race to back it off, set the income I lost from Goodyear by quitting, and stay there on the farm. And then graduated high school of 73, but I didn't start college at Murray till 79. I was a non-traditional student, and I was farming full time, single, and I would drive over and take morning classes and get back on the home and get on the tractor and put out a crop. So I kept repeating that process till I got a degree in agriculture with a teaching certificate and went on to earn a master's degree. And
if I could interrupt, by the way, you just received the Murray State University Distinguished Alumni Award.
Yes, I'll receive that.
I had to get that in there.
I appreciate that. Yeah. That's coming up Friday night. It's quite an honor. And it was the degree at Murray State. You know, if they were farming in the mid-'80s, they remember 3 droughts in a 5-year period. Grain prices went down, interest rates went up. There was no crop insurance in those days, just disaster loans. And after the 3rd disaster loan, I didn't need any more loans. I needed income. So was wrapping up my degree at Murray State. Took a job teaching agriculture at Palmersville, Tennessee. And after a year of that, realized that was not my calling, being a school teacher. And there was a job opening at the Graves County Co-op store for a manager. And they only interviewed candidates with college degrees. And that's when it came home to me how important that college degree was to me. And with my ag background and the degree in agriculture, I was a good fit for that. So I pivoted from the farming side of agriculture to the ag business side. And spent 13 years as manager, 2 years as manager trainee, 13 years as manager, and I learned the ag business side of it. In 2000, I had the opportunity to buy my oldest brother's barn building business, and I wanted to be in business for myself, and I had the background in business to do that, and I've had that from 2000 up till 2023 and just sold it to my nephew who wants to continue the Heath building name and keep it going.
Kentucky is at a crossroads. We can choose to give in to the radical left, or we can choose to engage the culture in a God-honoring way.
I started the Commonwealth Policy Center because I believe that Christians have a responsibility to influence government and society to the glory of God. While the Commonwealth Policy Center's made a significant impact, our work isn't finished. If you'd like to join our movement working for timeless values, then head to our website.
To learn more, go to commonwealthpolicycenter.org.
If you're just joining us, you're tuned into the Commonwealth Policy Center's Candidate Forum. I'm Richard Nelson, your host, here with State Representative Richard Heath, who represents House District 2, Far West Kentucky, Graves County. Richard, I want to pivot over to some of the social issues that you staked out a position on when you first ran. I know you have a pro-life voting record, Sanctity of Life. I think you've been a sponsor, co-sponsor of many pro-life bills. Another important issue is religious freedom. You've co-sponsored bills regarding religious freedom. How have you seen those issues in particular? We'll start with Sanctity of Life. What have you seen change since when you first stepped into the state capitol in 2013 to now, here in 2024?
The first 4 years I was here as in the minority under Democratic House leadership. And as I mentioned, my wife and I had switched parties because of pro-life issues. And I would watch the pro-life bills come from the Senate over to the House just to die in committee. They never got past committee. They never came to the floor for a vote, even with multiple tries from different directions. So then the House flips in 2016. Republicans take control in 2017. And that's when I became chair of the Ag Committee. But we also, the very first week we were there, we stayed on a Saturday. We stayed 5 days. We passed 3 pro-life bills. Right to work, repeal prevailing wage, and move some stuff down the road that had been bottlenecked for years. And then we've continued to pass pro-life bills ever since then. I've co-sponsored every pro-life bill we passed and voted for it. And I just look back and think, well, I guess God needed my vote in Frankfort.
Well, Kentucky doesn't have an abortion center in it.
Exactly.
And that was because of the 2019 trigger bill, which you were co-sponsor of. And because of that, the established abortion facilities are no longer allowed here in Kentucky. Let's talk about the gender ideology issue. A couple of years ago, Senate Bill 83 preserved women's sports. It's called the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. This kept the biological boys off of girls' sports teams. Of course, you were in favor of that. But then this last session, we saw, or last year, I should say, gender ideology education in public schools. That was Senate Bill 150. It banned not just the teaching of gender ideology in K through 12, but also kept gender dysphoric minors from pursuing hormone therapy and surgical procedures that would give them the appearance of the opposite sex. And of course, that issue is still ongoing, gender ideology. And what's the latest with that, gender ideology and LGBT activism in the public schools?
Yes. It's kind of like abortion. Once you start down that road, there's not a good quitting place. You know, when we started passing pro-life bills, we kept adding to those through the years, 1 or 2 every session. And I think we'll see the same way with the DEI. It's you got to start somewhere. You got to make a stand, and then once we get that accomplished, then we have to look and see what's next. So I think it's going to be around for a while. You mentioned what's changed since I came into to Frankfort. Who would have thought that we would be where we're having to pass legislation to prevent boys from playing girls' sports, to prevent boys from using girls' bathrooms and dressing rooms. I mean, with all the things that are going on in our world and in Kentucky, who would have thought we would have had to address those issues? But it has changed a lot this is my 12th year. So I'm thankful for individuals, like-minded individuals in Frankfort, rural Kentucky that still thinks like rural Kentuckians, that says this is just not right, and we're not going to sit here and do nothing.
Yeah, and you, of course, represent a very conservative district, and I would say that West Kentucky is a very conservative region of the state. Some of the more conservative legislators are from your neck of the woods. You mentioned DEI. Let's talk about that for a moment. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. There were a couple of bills proposed this last session that would push back against DEI programs at our colleges and universities. That bill didn't make it through. What was the holdup with that? And let me take a step back and explain a little more. I think the objection to DEI programs and departments was that it created an inequity in that it favored certain races over others. The equity part of the DEI emphasized equal outcomes instead of equal opportunity for everybody. Was that the holdup? Was that what was the sticking point in that? Because it seemed to have both support in the House and Senate, but it didn't pass.
Yes, and that's another one of those bills that you think, okay, this has a clear path forward, just like my ag land bill, and with countries not buying Kentucky farmland. And then it gets right down to the wire, and there's something happening behind the scenes that we don't have privy to, decision makers that can affect the outcome of those bills for whatever reason. And I trust my House leadership that they're making decisions based on information I don't have. So I don't have a good answer for that. One thing that crossed my mind when we were going down this road was the bill seemed to be very ominous. It was just so much in there. Mm-hmm. Should the bill sponsor take another look at that and treat it the way we did pro-life bills? When we passed 3 pro-life bills in 2017, our first year in the majority, we didn't try to right the ship all in one fell swoop. Mm-hmm. We tried to make a stand, take a position, and start down a path that we're on now. And then we've been back in session ever since then and continued to tweak that. And I think maybe that's what needs to be done with DEI, is find some common ground that we can get past, even if it's small, and then continue to develop that as time goes on.
Another important bill that did pass the legislature this last session was House Bill 2, which allowed for the possibility of school choice in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The language is interesting, but essentially it will alter the Constitution to give the chance, again, for school choice to come in. Where do you stand on that issue of school choice? I've
always voted for school choice, and I've explained to my principals and superintendents in the district that I represent why. And I think the parents know best what would work best for educating their kids. I'm about letting the parents make those decisions. So my attitude towards the constitutional amendment was, let's put this to a vote of the people. Mm-hmm. Let's let the people tell the legislature how you feel about this. Let's give you a say. Let's put it out there on the ballot. And that's the reason I supported the House Bill 2, the constitutional amendment. And in rural Kentucky, West Kentucky, where I'm from, we have good schools. We don't have a lot of the issues that we see in the larger cities. Mm-hmm. And I've explained this to our superintendents and to other people who asked me that question. But I've had an opportunity to visit some of the schools in Louisville, in Jefferson County. Mm-hmm. The first 4 years I was here, I served on the education committee, and I visited some of those schools. And at one of the meetings we were at, a teacher told our committee that some of our kids aren't interested in graduating. They just want to get old enough to draw a check. That's their goal in life. Their goal is not to get a high school diploma. Their goal is to get old enough to draw a check. How do you teach in that environment? And if those kids are disrupting the class and preventing the other kids from learning, that's not fair. So a lot of the legislation that is done is with those schools in mind.
I'd love to press into that a little further. However, we are running out of time. Real quick question. Should kids that just don't have a heart for school, I think we do need to, there should be basics, reading and writing, but maybe there should be an alternative that they go to work at a younger age or something like that. Is that something that is being talked about?
I'm not familiar with that conversation. I have heard stories of kids who got involved in something like 4-H or FFA or some kind of organization in the school that they became a part of something and their whole attitude changed and they pivoted.
That's good. That's good. Second Amendment, last issue I want to talk about. How important is that issue to you and your voters?
Very important. I have a concealed carry. I have weapons, and especially with all the illegals coming across the border, I think it's very important that we as citizens are able to protect ourselves and our household.
Okay, very good. Richard Heath, any last words to the voters? Of course, the primary election is coming up on May the 21st. Early voting begins on May the 16th. You've got the last minute.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I have people ask me all the time, do you enjoy this? And I say, well, yeah, if I didn't, I'd quit. I'd get out because it is very demanding on your schedule. And I still enjoy it. I've had people ask me, how long do you continue to do this? I've been there 12 years, and I'm in the top 10% in seniority and chair of a committee, and I feel like I can make a difference, not only for my district, but for the state of Kentucky. And my attitude is I want to continue to do it as long as I have the mental capacity and the physical ability and the people in District 2 want me to continue to serve.
Heath, best wishes to you in your reelection in the primary. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.